major one, sorry, I have to dismiss this. So this is a
Hello, Nadia. What happened? Can anyone hear me? I think we'll. Nadia, is something? How come you're muted? Yeah, can you unmute yourself? Oh, you're a co-host. Ask to unmute.
okay, great, thank you.
Nadia, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what happened there, but you are a co-host, so you should be able to share and you should be able to unmute yourself. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's not a big deal. I'm back. It's all technology. Hang on. Let me just reshare my screen and get back to where we were. So we were discussing the 4 concepts of Agile. If there are questions, guys, like Harry suggested in the beginning, please send them in the chat, and then I can refer to them later at the end with the Q&A. So those are the 4 core values of Agile, and I purposely took the time to explain each and one of them, because although the principles, the 12 principles are also important, but I believe that those, you just have to remember them by heart, and you need to understand them very, very well so that you can successfully implement Agile. Next, so as I mentioned, the manifesto also produced the 12 principles of Agile software development. It's an early delivery of the product, adapt to change, and you'll see that some of them are kind of similarly repeating the core values, but they're not exactly. They're more kind of chewing down on the core values. So early delivery of the product means give me something working faster, and then if you want to add more features, go ahead in second version, third version, whatever. Don't try to deliver me the moon in one go. Break it down. So adapt to change, like structure yourself so that if change comes along, it's easy to adapt to it. Frequent delivery really relates to early delivery of product as well. Break your work to smaller chunks and deliver them more frequently instead of, again, trying to deliver them one at once. Business and developers cooperation, that's a very important one. Remember, I mentioned the customer collaboration. That's one example. The customer is no longer a silo. They're part of the process, maybe not on a daily basis, but the business is part of the development process, which is, by the way, why the BA role exists, in my opinion. Motivated individuals, so important to any project, but to Agile in particular, because in order to move quickly and cohesively, the team needs to be motivated. Team needs to want to work with each other and get back to what they're doing every day happy. Face-to-face interactions. We haven't had much of these in the past 2 years. So I can say that this principle got somehow challenged, but it's important. That's why we turn on video. That's why on meetings, we always try to see each other. Working software. I don't think there's need to say anything here. We do need the software to be working and not buggy. Maintain a constant pace. So deliver frequently and maintain a constant pace so we can plan, so we know approximately how much we can deliver at any increment of time. Technical brilliance, that's some fancy words there, but be proficient to what you're doing. Simplicity, again, allows us to deliver frequently and allows, number one, Teams self-organization. Simply speaking, teams need to know how to arrange their work. They need to not be babysat. I'm sorry, that's the best word I could find for it. They need to know what to do, even if the PM suddenly is absent. Regular reflection and adjustment. So that is an important one. Important to take a moment to pause every once in a while, a predefined once in a while, to review what is it that we did? How did we do it? Was it good? Can we learn something from it? Can we implement the lessons going forward? So the 12 principles of Agile, very important. Now there might be a question, and I'm just going to say it before that question is raised. Are they in order of priority? No. No, and once again, no. There is no order to those 12. It's like none of us is able to say what's more important in a human body, the brain or the heart or the nerve system. If one doesn't work, the whole thing doesn't work. So the 12 principles are not hierarchical. They're all equally important. They're just numbered for ease of reference. So with that in mind, to understand how an agile project, software development project looks like, let's take a moment and think about the stages that a software development goes through. Obviously, we have requirements. Then we need to define designs. Then we do deployment, and that is a very simplified breakdown, but just for the purpose of getting the point across. Then we do development, testing, deployment, and review. Now, in a traditional software development process, it looked like that. From requirements to design, to development, to testing, to deployment, and to review. And I'm sure that half of you are now screaming that they know the name. Yes, that's Waterfall. That's the traditional approach. That's what used to work for years and years and years, a few decades, until that group came together and said, you know what, we could probably do things better. And then they defined Agile. So how does Agile look like? Same, but different. All the same stages. And I purposely use the same colors. It's the same requirements, then design, development, testing, deployment, and review. But they're not sequential. They come in a circle, and you'll see why in a second. So question is, so just kind of for easy comparison, just for you to have the visual in your heads, Agile versus Waterfall. In Waterfall, there is no transition from any stage to the stage before, well, it's not cyclical. That's the best way to describe it. So we focus today on Agile. My question to you, is that all? Is that the whole thing? If you understand this, do you understand what the Agile process is? No, you don't. I say no. I say, let's zoom out. Let's see what happens when we zoom out. When we zoom out, we see that the Agile process is comprised of iterations. The Agile process is by definition iterative. We have iteration number 1, then we run iteration number 2. And so we run them for whatever number of iterations we need to decide that we're done. All those are supplemented by the roadmap. They're fed by the roadmap more precisely. And at the end, at some point, we do deployment. We do deployment to production. We provide a live product to the client or to the market or whoever our client is. And then we do maintenance and support. Maintenance and support to make sure that the product is actually staying working. So is that it? Is that it? Is that the process? Is it that simple? Again, I say no. Let's take another dive in. Looking at the same process, and let's Let's zoom in at this number 5 stage for a second. You did requirements, design, development, testing, all great. Whatever you defined for your first iteration is working, you're ready to deploy. Let's assume you're deploying to production. If you deploy to production, what happens from this point onward is that you have a live product in access of users. It's actually live. If it's a mobile app, it's in the app stores. If it's a back office application that you built for your client, the client is using that application for their back office processes, it's a live product. So, well, what happens then? You carry on with your process. The roadmap keeps feeding each iteration. But it's not that simple, because now you have the live product. And then life happens. Bugs come up from production, and we call them hot fixes because they're needed yesterday. The client cannot wait for iteration number 2 to finish. They have a race tomorrow. They need to sell tickets for it. They need you to fix the bug today. So what you're doing is a small cycle that's called a hot fix. And then you deploy to production, and in parallel, you continue this chain of your iterations. Next, something happens. iOS comes up with a new version. Android applies changes to their libraries. And then what happens is technical debt is being created. And there are different words for that, but I chose technical debt just because it's easy to understand. And again, you need that yesterday because iOS is going live tomorrow. You can't wait for the next iteration. So you do another cycle. So even looking at this chart as it is right now, you see that to be agile, we need to be able to adapt. We need to be able to adjust ourselves to those changes that come along. I think it took longer than I expected. And we're, I think, at time. Harry, is that correct? For Q&A?
This is just half the time.
Okay. Okay. So how long do I still have before we need to start the Q&A?
I think you have about 15 minutes.
Awesome. All right. So here's what I'll ask you guys. Is that it? Oh, shit. It's overrunning. Here, I'll move it here. So is that it? Is that the process? Is that the whole? Are these all the use cases for when you need to suddenly deviate from your plan? And again, I say no. Let's look at something else. Keep this structure with the hot fixes and the technical debt. And then you know what? Suddenly something happened on the market and your client, sorry, not on the market. Something happened in testing. The UAT, the customer's UAT did not accept your product. While doing their UAT, they realized, oh, you know what? We underdefined requirements. We missed requirements or whatnot. And you need to suddenly go back from testing to development and do a small other cycle right between 3 and 4. Now, that is not something that the waterfall approach can accommodate, because the waterfall approach would just tell you it's a missed requirement. Great, we'll fix it next time. Like in 3-4 months or whatever, the next version goes out. With Agile, we say no. We discovered something that is very important for the end result. It's at a high enough priority, so it's not postponed to the next iteration. We'll do it now. We'll adopt this change now. We'll go back, we'll send it back to development, we'll send it to testing, and it will join this iteration. That's one of the beauties of how an agile process works. One other example, something happened in the market. Your client suddenly calls you and says, oh my God, you know what? I discovered that in a week, my main competitor is doing ABC. And in order to stay competitive, I need us to drop everything we're doing and skip to that scope of work that was planned for a month from now. So what you're doing, and you might be in development, you might be in testing. What do? you forfeit iteration 2, and you proceed to iteration number 3. Of course, there are ways to do that. And I'm speaking on a very, very high level just to give you ideas of how many things and how many use cases there are to things that affect our plan, things that interact with what we had in mind and make us change course. And the beauty in an agile process is that it allows you to do that. It allows you to adapt to change. It allows you to respond. It allows you to produce that piece of software more quickly, provide it to your client with lesser delays, and make them more satisfied, make them happier, and allow them to achieve their goals, their business goals, more easily, because they don't need to wait for another 3 months, like in a waterfall approach. All right, so, and obviously there are other use cases of what interrupts our plans. I just used the most common ones here to give you an idea. So I'm hoping that with this, you see the difference between a very strict waterfall approach and how an agile works. Now, let's go back for a moment to the four core values of agile software development. Now that we've discussed all the iterations and the changes and the being adaptable and whatnot, let's look at the core values again. So the core values, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software and comprehensive documentation. Working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. Now, we just discussed all the great and positive aspects of Agile. Let's summarize them for a minute so we see them in front of us easily. And by no means I'm intending to summarize them all. I'll just give you some samples of the pros for every core value, because we can discuss the pros like the whole day. So here are just a few examples, those examples that stand out to me the most in an agile process. Individuals and interactions over processes. Team members can shine in various ways. What I mean by that is that a tester can be a huge contributor to identifying the right architecture for your designs, because they, for example, if they have input, a BA could sometimes have a crucial input into UI UX. A developer could have an input to how we're testing software. That is a very important cross-functional feed that an agile team has. No red tape. Team members collaborate, communicate. We don't stick to titles. Another one is choose the tools and processes for the team versus adjust the team to tools and processes. And I think that the best example I can give you for that is standardization. So many organizations today, and always actually, have been proponents of let's standardize. We'll standardize our processes throughout the company. We'll run all our projects in the same way. What we're saying by that is we'll tell every team how they need to work, regardless of whether it works for them or not. They'll just have to adjust. Now, that stands in complete contradiction to the agile perception. An agile perception, as we discussed, says we can suggest tools and processes to the team, but the tools and processes will need to adjust themselves to the team and not vice versa, because individuals and interactions are more important and are higher contributors to the end result than processes and tools, because that's what we prefer. Next point, working software. work in software over comprehensive documentation. So as I discussed before, instead of spending weeks and sometimes months on documenting requirements and documenting business rules before the project, past the project, whatnot, we focus on faster delivery, easier adaptation to change. And with that comes competitiveness, because we allow our customer the bits and pieces of the product that we provide them the product they need in bits and pieces. They get it sooner, they're more positioned to be competitive, they're more positioned to get to their goals faster. Customer collaboration. So with the customer being part of the process of an agile development, they're closer to what's going on. And we all know that the closer we are to something that is in development, the better adoption rate we'll have. When you're part of something, you're more likely to like the end result. You're more likely to not sympathize, but to wanting to work with that end result. So leading to better adaptation. Higher satisfaction. The client was able to put their 5 cents in every step of the way. Of course, they will be more happy. It comes down to, guys, I've seen examples of great work, amazing efforts by the development team, but the customer wasn't happy in the end because of the size of the font. Just imagine that. Your development team was working for months on something very technically challenging, but at the end of the day, the client wasn't really happy with the size of the font or the font color or whatnot. Just imagine the frustration. However, if they're part of the process, they will catch that early on and they'll say, oh, you know what, I want that larger, or I want that smaller, or I want that greener, or whatnot. The nitty-gritty details. They are. And again, it's just one example of how they can contribute so they're more satisfied at the end. And obviously faster feedback loop, which is kind of what I just mentioned. Last one, responding to change. I gave those examples as we were going through the presentation. Responding to change allows us to attend to missed requirements early on and not in 3 months' time. Allows us to accept change requests if something changed in the customer's business and they suddenly need something else to be done or need the same thing to be done differently. We're able to do that immediately. Just change course right away. Okay. And changes in team composition, which is also important. People get promoted, people move on, people get fired, unfortunately, but our teams change. So with being agile, we're able to change. If team composition changes and suddenly say our skills are a bit different, being agile, we're able to balance and allow our team members to do the best they can and contribute the best they can in the new setting as well. So looking at this slide, it's so roses. It's so great. I'm looking at that and I'm saying, great, I'll do agile to the rest of my professional life, right? No. You know why? Because there are cons and risks that need to be attended to. They need to be minded. With all those great benefits, there are downsides. And I'll just give you a few examples because we can spend the day discussing them. Individuals over interactions over processes and tools. That can sometimes lead to confusion over responsibility. So who's responsible for the test cases? Is it the BA? Is it the QA? Is it the PM? Everyone wants to contribute. Everyone was contributing throughout the process. So who's responsible? More importantly, who's responsible for the mistake at the end? Different projects may use different tools and processes, meaning within the same organization, meaning that when a team member moves from project to project, and mind you, sometimes people work on different projects simultaneously. When processes and tools adjust themselves to the team, when one moves from one project to project, it's a longer ramp up. They need time to adjust. They can't just seamlessly move from project to project knowing what to do, because on one project, we can say that in development state means A, but on project B, in development state would mean something else. So there's a downside to adjusting, to not being standardized across tools and processes. There's more examples, obviously. Working software. Product makes to market or production in a less competitive form and keeps evolving. Now, one may say that it's a plus, and I have mentioned that as a plus, but on the other hand, if the client wanted 10 features in their product, but we broke it down to, with their agreement, of course, but we broke it down to sections, they know that on the first iteration, they're not getting the whole shebang, right? So they need to be able to prioritize very, very carefully, because they know that they will be getting their work in chunks. So that's a fine balance there. Documentation would often be scarce or shallow. I know that any one of you who ever joined an active project or joined an active product knows what I'm talking about. I just picked up a project that hasn't been worked on for 2 years. No one from the original team is anymore around, and I have no idea what set of rules, business rules, the project is based on, because there was a clear preference to product over documentation, and they didn't find the fine balance between what they're leaving behind as documentation and an additional feature. A very, very, very fine balance. I cannot emphasize that enough. It takes practice, and it takes very good knowledge of your environment to decide what is too much and what is too little. So it's a huge risk of agile projects. Most agile projects do not leave sufficient documentation. Customer collaboration. So sometimes seeing too much too soon is a downside. Sometimes I would like my client to not see where we are midway, because they might jump too fast, they might make conclusions too fast, they might not have the patience to wait. And for the customer, more time, and it's more time consuming. They can't just say, hey, I want that pie in the sky. They need to come to meetings with me every week or every 2 weeks or whatever we decide, but it's definitely a more extensive time commitment from them than in a waterfall project. And last but not least, responding to change. So all those loops, all those iterations, all those hot fixes, all those technical debts, all those changes that we had to adapt to, they take time and they're costly. So while a waterfall project knows exactly how much they'll spend, on an agile project, unless we have a cap, we will probably exceed. But if we have a cap, we will not exceed the costs, but we may under-deliver, because we're agile. We're adjusting to change. And it might take us double, if not triple the time to deliver the same feature, because we were adapting to change and accepting change requests and accepting missed requirements and whatnot. So again, a very, very fine line between what is too much and what is too little. Where do you stop your client? Where do you stop your testing team? When do you say, I do not accept into the current iteration anymore? So a lot to think about. There's definitely, sometimes it's easy. Sometimes we have very clear criteria how to choose a waterfall versus agile. Yes, waterfall approach is the traditional approach, and yes, waterfall approach is outdated. However, it's not completely redundant. For specific projects and because of lack of time, I won't go into the definitions, to the criteria of those projects, but there is a very clear criteria to what type of projects are better run as agile and what better run is Waterfall. And of course, there is a lot of gray in the middle. So I think that's our time for Q&A, right, Harry?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Nadia.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm just looking through the questions, a couple of them.
Sorry, I'm running
Nadia?
through. We had a few slides that I didn't get a chance to, so I just kind of jumped into Q&A. Yes.
Nadia, it looks like you have to come back because it looks like
I'm here.
there's certain things that you had for us that because of time. Please, can you post your questions? There are a lot of chatting here. I'm trying to sieve out the questions.
So while Harry is sorting the questions out, I'll just mention something. Guys, Agile can be spoken about for months, for weeks. It's a lot.
Yeah, true.
And even I, with a small presentation that I prepared, I have prepared material that we haven't even touched on. So if Harry and Nogi would like to arrange for another meeting, I would like to kind of run another one, like a chapter 2, and continue from where we left. We'll see about that. So don't feel like you have to know exactly what Agile is once we're done with this. This was just a tip of an iceberg.
Great. Great. Thank you for that, Nadia. We'll hold you up to that. Can we, I'm not seeing any questions. Can we have the slide? I don't think so. I can answer that myself. If you have questions, please, you can post your questions. If you have any questions.
If there are no questions, I would like to, maybe we can do another 1 or 2 slides, because I had a very interesting concept.
Great, I agree. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So I'm sorry for everyone who was able to see my slides quickly. I apologize. So just forget it for a second. Let's think. And I'm referring mostly to people who are familiar with Agile, who have worked on projects that call themselves Agile. You probably noticed that there were some words that I have not used throughout this hour, not even once. I'll give you a few examples. I haven't used the word sprint even once, not retrospective, sprint review, sprint planning, daily scrums, backlog, and these are just a few very, very distinct examples of what I didn't use. And I didn't use them, that wasn't oversight. I did not use them purposely. You ask why? Because they're all Scrum related. Often when people work on Agile projects, they use the word Scrum and Agile interchangeably. So are they the same? They're definitely not the same. And I would like you, if you take anything from this 1 hour, I would like you to take this away. Agile and Scrum are not the same. And the software development world is often getting confused. And they differ. Here's how they differ. Agile, it's almost a philosophy. So if you search the net, you'll find words like it's an umbrella term for blah, 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 for frameworks, for concepts. I call it philosophy. I call it philosophy because it's what mindset do we take into our project? How do we approach our project mentally? While Scrum is work methodology, it's a framework. It tells you how often to run your meetings, what titles or what names to positions you need to have on your team, how those interact, how often those interact. So that's a very, very specific, and I would even say strict methodology. So while I'll repeat that for a second. So while Agile is more of a philosophy, is what state of mind you take into your project. Scrum is a methodology. There are steps to follow. Definitely not the same. Don't make this mistake. A project can be agile, but not use Scrum. I'll be honest, I'm not using Scrum on any of my projects. Have not used it, and the moment I understood that they're not the same, and the moment I understood what real Scrum is, to be honest with you, I decided that I'm not using it. And the closest that I'm ever using to Scrum is a hybrid approach between Scrum and something else. I probably make it myself, but read about Scrum. Read about Scrum and you'll see the difference. So I want this to be very clear, and I do want to pause here for a second and see if there are any questions about this one slide.
Yeah, we have a question that says, is there a difference between backlog planning and sprint planning?
Yes, absolutely. Backlog planning, yeah, there again, we're mixing up words from Scrum and not Scrum. Backlog, by definition, is a word that belongs to Scrum. And Scrum defines two different types of backlogs: product backlog and sprint backlog. And sprint backlog is essentially the set of tasks, features, set of requirements. Sorry, let's talk in requirements. It's a set of requirements that we've decided to deliver in a certain sprint, while product backlog is everything that we foresee for the product, all the requirements. Again, the pie in the sky idea, everything that we want to see today, tomorrow, in a month, in a year. So the sprint backlog is a chunk of the product backlog. So sprint planning is actually a process. Sprint planning is that process in which we review what was decided for the sprint. So essentially review the sprint backlog. We ask questions to the client, to the design team, to whomever. We decide how to do, we do the work breakdown, meaning that we decide what tasks need to be achieved to deliver those requirements. We do our assessments. We do the whole shebang so that the second we say that the sprint planning phase is done, we can click the imaginary button and say, go, development starts. And development knows what they're doing. And obviously QA as well. So does that make it clear? So sprint backlog is a set of requirements, while sprint planning is a process.
Yeah, Harry asked that question, not me, another Harry. I hope that answers your question. Let me check for another question. Can I practice Agile in traditional waterfall projects?
Some projects are, how they call, they use a hybrid Agile approach. What I mean by that is they would be Agile between iterations, between sprints, but they would be waterfall within a sprint. So let's say that they decided that they're developing 10 requirements in this sprint. If any bugs come out from that sprint or any missed requirements are identified, they would often not be adopted into the existing sprint, but would be put off to the next one. So it's like being strict within an Agile overall cycle, well, process, not cycle, sorry. And so for me, that's the only way that I'm familiar with for combining Agile and Waterfall.
Okay. Thanks, Nadia, for that. Another question. Yes, Harry said he understands what you said. It makes sense. Thanks. Please, what will be the unique deliverables for a business analyst on an Agile project that also has a product owner?
Okay. Wow. Yeah, we can dedicate a whole session to that, but I'll try it. Let me think of how I explain this easily. So product owner is identifying the requirements they want to be delivered. They tell you, I want a button, a contact me button on my website. That's what I want. That's my highest business need at the moment. But that's where their job kind of ends. Well, not ends, but that's their span of responsibility for the initiation. Now, then comes in the business analyst. And it's the business analyst's job to understand what the product owner wants, to communicate with the development team so that the requirement is understood, well broken down, to identify whatever business rules that go along with that requirement, whatever use cases. So we do the analysis. So if you need a very clear kind of rule of thumb separation, the product owner tells you what they want us to do, what requirement they want us to deliver, and the BA that makes sure that the delivery team is actually able to deliver that. Whatever it takes, communication with the designer, communication back with the product owner, helping the development team understand the work breakdown, helping the QA team identify use cases, sometimes testing, often working with the designers. So being that pivotal role that makes it all happen. Make sense?
Awesome answer. I really love that. That really clarifies the distinction between the product owner and the BA if you have both in a project. Thank you so much.
By the way, guys, sometimes you will find yourselves doing double roles, being the product owner and being the BA. Depends on the client.
Exactly. Okay, no more questions. What I have here is someone trying to define what Scrum is, but I don't think that's the question. So does anybody have any other question or want to ask your question verbally? Just raise your hand. We'll take just 2 questions and then we can call it a day. It's supposed to be 1 hour meeting. We'll try and get Nadia back. She's offered to come back, so I'll hold her to our words.
Okay.
It's always good to have her around. Okay. Yes, please. Somebody said something. Okay. Yeah. So how do you know or differentiate when to use Scrum from other methodologies?
That's an interesting question. 1 minute, this definitely doesn't do justice to the answer. There are different. In order to answer this question, it's important to review other methodologies like Kanban, like, sorry, the other names are escaping me, a hybrid approach. I really suggest that this might be a subject for another meeting. I'm not necessarily saying, Harry, if you have someone else who can do that, then definitely I'm just saying that this warrants for a meeting by itself. But to be able to choose, you need to understand very well what you're choosing from. Sorry, I know that it's not really an answer, but the best one I can give in short time.
Yeah, we have a training going on, so you can register and we'll let you know about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm muted. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Nadia. In SDLC, okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, it's all thank you, Nadia. Thank you, Nadia. What do you do in an Agile team where a sponsor wants a 3 sprints project completed in 2 sprints?
I ask them what they want to deprioritize. I ask them what they want to leave out. And sometimes they would be leaving out things vertically, like leave that feature out. But sometimes they would be leaving out things horizontally, meaning I want all those features, but maybe not as in-depth as otherwise we would deliver them. Maybe a simpler solution would work. So at that point, I call for an urgent meeting with the client and I say, let's slice, because I only have those resources. What do we do with them?
Great answer again. Yeah, thanks, Nadia. Really good information. Thank you, Nadia. There's a lot of thanks there. Please show your love to Nadia before she leaves. I can't see any questions, so we'll call it a day. But before we do that, I want to appreciate, we had about 69 or 70 people that came today. Even though I really appreciate Nadia for coming, she's extremely busy. So having her here is it's a privilege, but I also want to thank every other person that is here. I can't begin to mention your name. Without you, Nadia would just be talking to me and Oge, but but having you here makes it worthwhile, and it makes us feel like all we are trying to do to the community, is really appreciated. So I want to appreciate everybody, and please just show your love to Nadia. Nadia, there are a lot of thank you. We'll get the recordings out to our YouTube page, although we are currently streaming on the YouTube page, and would let you know when Nadia will be coming back again. Can we get the recording? Yes, it will be on YouTube. It's actually streaming on YouTube now, but you get a fuller version later. But you can just go to our YouTube page and you should be able to find that. I'll just quickly share the link so you can always pick it up from the chat box. Awesome, that is shared. So thank you so much, Nadia. We really, really appreciate you. We know there's not enough time, but we'll get you back to.
We'll definitely schedule something for another session. I just need to prepare some good materials again. Thank you everyone for your good questions. These were really good questions.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
everyone. Take care and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.